My face was torn, like literally, opened in half.
Welcome to another episode of Dreams Made Possible, where we share Life 101 conversations for a great life. My name is Botaki Hlalele, a life coach on a mission to cultivate personal mastery and self-worth in others. In this podcast, we conversate with personal development specialists, leaders from across different walks of life who have left an indelible mark on others, and ordinary folk who have beat the odds to be where they are. Before we continue, please click on the link below and subscribe so that we can build a community of dreamers. Today's guest is none other than Tshepiso Tabane. She is a mother of one. She has occupied a number of roles in the HR space, spanning different multinational companies. She is currently an HR executive at Hlalele, where she leads the HR team. But most importantly, she is an ordinary South African with a story to share, the story that will give somebody hope. Because one of the nights in 2010, she nearly lost her life. And we are grateful to God that she is here today to share her story with us. Welcome, Tshepiso, to Dreams Made Possible podcast.
Thank you very much, Botaki. And indeed, I'm grateful to God that I'm here today to share my story.
Thank you so much. Maybe before we start, let's go back to your childhood in terms of just a big background so that we know who we're talking to. Because I always believe that we don't talk to roles, we don't talk to positions, we talk to people. And that's what through this podcast we'd like to convey out there. Who is Tshepiso, especially in the context of how did you grow up? What experiences shaped your outlook to life?
I am originally from Limpopo, in a township called Leboa Homu, in the former Leboa Bantustan. I come from a family of 2 children. I've got an older sister. I grew up in a community, not only with my family, but in a broader community with my relatives, my aunts, my cousins, and those are the very, very, very early years of my life that really shaped who I am, a member of a community. I did my schooling, my primary school in Leboa Homu. But then our parents sent us to boarding school for high school. And being at at boarding school in a small village called Jane First is also a big part of what shaped me, to who I am and what I am today. Being at boarding school at such a young age teaches you to be independent. To really know that, you've got to back yourself up. You've got to put in the hard work. Your mom, your dad is not there to help you with your homework or to, help you with your laundry on a Saturday afternoon. So those were the sort of the very early years that really shaped me and shaped who I am.
Okay, so now that you telling us that you went to boarding school,
yes.
One child can interpret it differently to say, hey, these parents don't want to take responsibility of me. They are sending me away. Yes, much as you say it taught you independence, but maybe talk us to that. How did you interpret this thing of being taken to a boarding school at a young age?
Well, the fortunate thing is my sister had gone to the same boarding school a couple of years before me. So it was like an exciting, adventure. You're looking forward to, being in a new environment, making new friends, creating new memories. So for me, it was really the next step, a new adventure. And, one of the things that I'm grateful for boarding school is the community of friends that I made right from a very young age. Some of my best friends up to, now in my life, 32 odd years later, are friends I made when I was in standard 5 at boarding school, So that also taught me, valuable life lessons, the ability to function and to live, among other people.
Wow. If you may just share with us in terms of your friends, so what are those things that have contributed to the relationship to evolve to where it is today, 32 or so years later?
We have supported each other. I've got friends who have different careers to mine. So even right from the early, stages at boarding school, we were able to learn from each other. We have different skills, and the ability to, want to, form a bond, help each other through homework. That is still something that binds us together, even now when we are, big proper adults.
Yes.
We have different strengths, but that inner want to, want to be, part of, a community. Is what keeps us together, even now.
No, that's wonderful.
Interestingly, I actually had dinner with them last night.
Wow.
The very same friends that this journey started in 1989.
Okay, so before we go into your story, I just want to also test something in terms of you being in boarding school,
Yes.
Especially around issues of confidence, self-esteem, and the like. I have come to understand from my experience, but also from my children's experience, that school children can be mean. When you were at boarding school, did you come across any challenges from other children that, besides your good friends, that could have challenged how you see yourself and how you show up out there?
You're right. School kids can be absolutely mean. I was fortunate in that I had, I think, I had classmates and schoolmates who, came from similar communities. We shared sort of fundamental values, so we knew what was wrong, we knew what was right, just at the basic level. And the challenges, at boarding school were really about finding yourself and finding your strengths with the schoolwork that that we did. One of my best friends was the top student in maths and science, and those were my weakest subjects. She was able to help me through the difficulties, but I also knew that, I was never going to be the top student or even one of the top students in maths and science, and I was okay. I was okay with that.
Wow.
I knew that I was able to show up brilliantly in other subjects, and that gave me the confidence and, built my self-esteem that, in life, you are not going to be good at everything. You do your best, with everything, but you know that there are strengths, that you really then push forward with.
But not many people have got that awareness at that young age. How did that awareness come about, where you accept that this is my strength, this is not my strength?
And at that age, I think some of these things, they sort of, they're happening, but, they don't have headings or, these big realizations, called self-awareness itself. I think, one foundation that's critical comes from home. It comes from home where your family, your parents sort of accept you and love you and uplift you for who you are. While our parents encouraged us to do our best and work hard, they also, accepted and realized that each of us have got different strengths. Each of us are going to show up in life and really succeed in life differently. My sister, for example, has got very different strengths to me. She's an engineer. I was never going to pass any module of engineering. However, we were able to grow confidently, from the same household, because our parents, taught us that, you are enough.
Yeah.
Right from an early age. You're enough. Step up and step out into the world boldly, and you'll be fine and successful.
What I take out of what you said is a very important lesson for parents, even those who will be future parents, to give confirmation,
Absolutely.
and really impress upon their children that they are good enough, especially if they are good enough in what they are doing, because it builds that confidence and self-worth and acceptance in them. So maybe let's go to that fateful night.
Yes.
In 2010. Everyone in the country is excited about the game between Ghana and Germany. I remember I went downtown in Newtown, big screen, watched the game there. But little did I know that my friend actually is facing life and death situation at that moment. Maybe before you can get into the actual story of what happened, take us just that day. Usually on this podcast we talk about the day in the life of, but in this instance I would just like you to take from when you wake up being excited to go out, I guess excited to go see your friends. Maybe talk to the day where it started until you came across the accident.
It was the 2nd of July, 2010. It was a Friday. I was working that day. The following day, I was going to attend class. I was busy studying at the time as well. And it was actually a very packed day. That afternoon, I checked in on a cousin of mine who had graduated, and just to say congratulations, very proud of you, in Newtown actually. As soon as I came from that graduation tea, I had agreed with friends of mine to babysit for them because they were going to the stadium at FNB in Nazareth to watch that particular game. So I went to their house to babysit for them because they went to watch the game. So because I was attending class the following day, I had to drive back in the middle of the night to where I stayed in order, to prepare for the following morning. So around midnight, I traveled back to where I was staying at the time. And I can honestly say, so many years later, on that day, the Lord showed up. I have, spaces of time that I cannot remember. I have no memory of. I do not know what happened. The 1 minute I know I was on the N1, and the following minute I was in hospital. And from information that I gathered from friends, family, and other people, I had had a car collision with another vehicle, a bigger vehicle to mine. My car was a write-off. I hit my face, on the steering wheel. Obviously, became unconscious. And when I woke up, I was in hospital. So
Wow.
That's in summary, I guess, that particular day.
So you say that you don't have recollection, and
Yes.
then the next time you were in the hospital, when did that realization that you are in the hospital come about? Is it the next morning? Is it the next 2 days? Do you have that?
It was the following morning. The power of medicine. Even when you are unconscious, they're able to, give you, medicine, morphine, stuff in the, that keep you comfortable, even though you are, fatally. I mean, even though you are wounded seriously. So I think it was the following morning. My sister was there. One of my best friends, was there, and I asked them, so where am I? And then they said, no, you're in the hospital. You had a motor vehicle accident.
Wow. Do you have an idea, or can you walk us through the types of injuries that you sustained as a result of that accident?
Yes, I sustained serious injuries on my face, and through God's grace, those were the injuries that I sustained. But they were quite serious because I completely broke my nose. My face was torn, like literally, opened in half. But nowhere else, did I sustain any injury. And I see that as a real blessing. Yeah.
Okay. So how long did you stay in the hospital?
I stayed in the hospital for just under a month, because the swelling had to go down. I had to, wait for the swelling to go down before surgery was performed, to, put the face together again, and also just monitor vital signs such as, head injuries, brain damage, if there's any. Fortunately, there wasn't. Yes, but in terms of, I guess, being off from work, from school, from normal social activity, it was probably about 3 months.
Okay. Wow. So you spent a month in the hospital, and now you saying, as you say, your face, being torn in two. I just would wonder, what was going through your mind before you could actually see your face. Maybe walk us through that. What was going through your mind?
You actually get to see your face when you get home. In hospital there was no mirror, and maybe intentionally so, because I can imagine it could have been very traumatic for myself. So I only actually got to see my face when I got home. In that whole period that I was in hospital, half of that time I was in bandages. My face was in bandages, and then half of the time, I didn't see my face, and I didn't even ask the people who would come and visit me, how do I look, etc. I think you go through a phase of just being a bit numb, some level of disbelief, especially because you don't have recollection, you don't have a memory of what happened, for you to get to that point. So I spent quite a lot of, I would say, quiet space, when I was in hospital.
Okay. Now, why did you use that quiet space? What were you going through during that quiet space? Probably that's an internal conversation you were going through with yourself.
Yes, an internal conversation. You're trying desperately to understand what happened. You are, asking yourself, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be the same again? Am I going to be normal again? Am I going to be able to go to work? Will I be able to continue with my studies? Because those were also, big things in my life, that also, were defining who I am, at that time. And when you are in hospital, there are no answers. No nurse walks in and can give you answers. Your parents look distressed all the time. But you cannot reassure them. You cannot give them answers. They cannot give you answers either. You spend considerable amount of time in silent prayer, so to speak. The good thing in all of this was that I was awake. I was awake. I was able to converse, with people, but you're still not sure, what the world, will look like when you come out of hospital. Okay. I sustained, the injuries were quite severe, and the doctors don't tell you that. You're going to be absolutely fine. You're going to go back to normal. I guess they also don't know. They've done their best, and it's like a wait and see game. Yeah.
Wow. Do you still have a recollection of if you had responses to the questions you were asking yourself, whether will I be normal? What's going to happen to my work? All those questions. Did you have answers to those questions at that moment to yourself?
No, I didn't. Okay. No, I didn't. And out of that whole experience came out some big, valuable lessons for me going forward in my life. That life doesn't always have answers, no matter how hard you ask. And, not having the answers to certain questions, can sometimes be the healer that you need. The ability to carry on and hope for the best. Even when you don't have all the answers or all the pieces to the puzzle. But your inner strength to say, what, I forge on day by day, it gets better, but you still don't have the answers.
Yes. So usually we say when things are tough, one way in which people go through those tough moments is if one of those tools that people use is to reflect back and say, hey, I once had a similar experience, and this is how I went through that experience, and as a result, I'm borrowing from what I used at that time to take myself through that situation. So I guess, and I don't want to conclude that there wasn't an experience of that magnitude that you went through before. But maybe let me not conclude and ask you, was there something that was of so much significance that had happened to you before that you could tap into in terms of then how do I navigate this challenge that I have at this moment?
You're 100%. There really wasn't. There wasn't a reference point or a past moment. I had been really blessed to almost have a safe passage, if you if you were to that moment in my life. And it was almost a generation of new life skills, new lessons, to pick up and carry on with my life, which I'm extremely grateful for, because I usually say to my friends or even my colleagues to say that day, whether I knew it or realized it or not, was day one of a second chance.
Wow.
Day one of a second chance, in my life. God really gave me another opportunity to live, and I started again, so to speak. Yeah.
We'll come back to the starting again and moving forward, because I want to believe, as you say, it's part of the journey that you had to go through. But let me take you back to that moment. Now you go out of the hospital, you had said that there were bandages on your face, and you were thinking, wow. Actually, I would assume that, how am I looking? And then you get to that moment, bandages are off, you get in front of the mirror. In your words, what did you see? And how did you interpret what you see in the mirror?
I saw myself. I saw a seriously injured Tshepiso. I was still very, very swollen. Certain parts of the face were still open, and I still had the questions of, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Am I going to live the rest of my life with a face like this? And you can imagine, as a woman, as a lady, these are, things in our society that are a big deal in one way or the other, you stand in front of the mirror and you're like, this is it, But the doctors had said to me that the healing process takes time.
Okay.
The healing process takes time. Things, will, grow back, and I must just give myself time. And that's what I was holding on to, The other thing I was holding on to was my family, my parents. When they visited me and they, in hospital and they were looking at me, they were not, they didn't have these shock faces, these, faces that were like, oh, what has happened to our child?
Yeah.
They were always positive. They were always, coming across as normal, as if they're seeing. And then they're talking to Tshepiso that they've always known. That gave me strength that, it's not as bad as, sometimes the mind can believe it is.
Okay. So that support structure that you spoke about,
yes,
as you were growing up, comes to the occasion again.
Yes.
And then from what you have said, the whole issue of independence and self-belief that you have developed, I guess, during your boarding school, seems like those two are converging to give you the strength to move on. Will it be the right summation of how you went through the healing process? And maybe you can also, let me ask it as double-edged. On top of that, did you have any other support system outside yourself and your family, especially in the context of this phase still being opened? Issues of self-acceptance, for example. Did you have any other support, maybe from a shrink or any other person in that regard, except your family and yourself?
I had amazing support from the company I worked for at that time. For that reason, I will always eternally be grateful for the support that they gave me. My boss at the time visited me in hospital. Brought a pair of new pajamas. Just really gestures of care, support. You are part of a team that is concerned about you. That, strength that you get from a broader community,
yes,
really fuels you, really strengthens you. At that time, I did not undergo the process of counseling or, a formal process like that. I did not believe that I needed it at the time. I was, I really wanted a quiet time. Some people will call it finding yourself. you know, and not only finding yourself, but quietening yourself.
Yes.
So these questions that now and then you have, now and then you pass the mirror, etc. At that point, I believe I needed to quieten them myself. So I spent a lot of time in, you know, in quiet periods. You know, even though there were friends that visited, work colleagues that, you know, visited me during the time I was still on leave, I spent considerable amount of time in the quiet.
Wow. And probably, as you say, you know, that moment of quietening that you need to be able to reflect and go on your own. Now, Tshepiso, let me call it the safe space. It's your own habitat, it's your own house. You have this moment with yourself, it's your bedroom. When you are with your family, it's you and your family. But we go out because we cannot stay in those environments forever. You go out, you go to malls, you find yourself going to work. Two things that I have seen when generally with the challenges that people go through is, one, you either then have to over and over repeat your story, what happened, and probably you get, oh, shame, those type of things. The second part of it is now you get stares from people, you know, who probably are asking themselves, what happened to this woman? Especially people who know you. And I'll speak for myself. We have known each other for quite some time. When we first met, after that long time, you know, I had this temptation of wanting to ask what happened, but I held myself back. And, you know, as I watch you in your face, ordinarily I'll be drawn to the injuries, you know, and subconsciously I would then want to draw myself back to say, hey, don't stare that much, you know. But when you walk into a mall, somebody might not have that courtesy, you know, they will follow you. So my question is two-pronged. One, out of now this safe space of having to, I suspect having to tell the story over and over, and secondly, dealing with the stress and other stuff. Did you go through that?
I absolutely went through that. Remember earlier on I said I was in the middle of studies. And when I was in hospital and still in the leave period at home, I asked myself if I would like to continue with the studies. The school I was doing my studies with, her, you know, we're willing to, you know, let me pause the studies and resume them the following year. But they said to me, it's 100% up to you. You know, we will be guided by you. And in that quiet time that I referred to during the 3-month sick leave, I decided I want to go back to studies. I feel strong enough, and you know, it needs to be tested. You know, otherwise, then you don't know. You just assume that you are not strong enough.
So, for the benefit of somebody who's listening, I just want to understand, what do you mean by you going out and this being tested? What is it that you wanted to test by going out?
I wanted to test, firstly, whether I can function, you know, like I used to function, because that was my life. That's what I know. You know, that's the life script that I have. And I also wanted to, you know, really pick up on the things that were very important to me at that time. I was studying an MBA at that time, something that I had heavily invested in time, you know, effort, learning, and my, you know, the company that I was working for at that time had also paid that school fees, you know, so, you know, there was a lot riding on, you know, the study journey, you know, as an example. So I decided to go back to, you know, to school and really face the fears of the stairs, the questions. And I guess I had accepted that the questions were expected and they were normal, So I did go and resume studies. My classmates did ask questions, they did stay, but that's life, I still wanted to, continue learning, and I still wanted to graduate. I still had the same dreams, the same, ambitions as the people that were around me. When I went back to work, it was a similar situation. But fortunately for me, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my clients that I supported as an HR professional, were very understanding and really just allowed me to sort of normally integrate back into the normal, daily business. And I'm glad that I did that. I pushed through that. Not only did I successfully complete my studies as I had planned, but I think a lesson to carry forward, from that moment was, you get up. If you do get down, you get up, brush off the dust, and you walk strong, and then you walk forward. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Tshepiso, maybe help us understand one thing here. When people go through challenges, it's usually not a straight line, as I like to put it. One moment you are up, one moment you are down. So it's not always about being too optimistic and hyped up to say, hey, things will be okay. Did you have during that time any low ebbs, the low ebbs, where you had to dig deep twice to look forward to a brighter future?
I had lows. I had lows. I remember saying to my sister, I think this is the lowest point of my life. I did. One of my lows, I don't have a car. Now I need to go to the police station, to get a case number for insurance purposes. Just that whole admin journey. I walked into a police station in the middle of Sandton, and the police officers there didn't care. Didn't care. They wanted me to write a statement about a situation I had no memory of. I remember one of the officers, they actually laughed when I said, I don't know, I don't have a recollection of what happened. So I cannot write a story that I don't know. And, he laughed. He laughed out loud and said, how does somebody, how's somebody involved in an accident and they have no idea what happened? Ha, 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 ha. You are there, you are sore, you are, your face is, something else at that time. It's right at the beginning of healing. You yourself are trying to understand, what happened, why me? You've got those questions yourself. And somebody who's supposed to help you, somebody who's supposed to, I guess, in some way sympathize with you. It's a joke, it's a nothing, When I left that, that police station, I felt, demoralized. I felt unsupported. That was really a low. That was a proper low for me. Yes, so there are a number of lows that I've had. I've had moments where your tears just, come because you're like, but like, why did this happen? Is there a supposed lesson in this? Is there, am I ever gonna, be, loved? Those kind of questions, you do have.
Yeah. And fortunately, besides the no showing of empathy from the policemen, we just hope we get the better ones in our police stations.
And they are.
Yeah. Besides those ones, the love expressed or unexpressed, being it from your parents, being your colleagues. Those are things I think we should be grateful for, and I'm grateful for those people as well to show you that type of gratitude in that process. So Tshepiso, there's in most cases an element of justice. When people go through things, we differ as people. People sometimes want justice, to see justice happening. And what I mean in this instance is, you say the car was bigger, this bigger car, middle of the night, you didn't even see who visited this bad situation upon you. Just maybe tell us, how did you go through that? Was there a point where you wanted to really see who did this to you? Was there ever a point where you said, these people must have a day in court? And I'm just asking this so that we can just understand how you process that at that time, because there are people out there, as I said at the beginning of the question, who would always want to see justice because they believe for them that would be closure.
I never had I would like to see justice moment. I had other moments. I wanted to find out what happened to my vehicle. Where is it? Because I've never seen my vehicle after the accident. There were police people there, there were traffic officers there, there were tow truck people there, and that whole episode, that whole story literally just disappeared into thin air. So I needed to understand, why is it that a whole community of these people who were there, how is it that no one knows anything, and there is no trace of any of this anywhere, absolutely anywhere. The accident happened on the highway, probably the biggest highway in South Africa, just off, Bryanston, and yet there was no accident that was reported on that fateful night. There was no police station in the whole of Gauteng that this incident was reported at. So for me, that was the mystery that I wanted to understand. If we want to talk about justice, or just really, how do things disappear like this? That was a big thing for me. I also, heard that the vehicle I had collided with was a vehicle with a lot of individuals in and probably not quite a legal situation there. So probably something happened there that ended up in the the whole episode almost having not existed. But now you've got somebody who has really been injured, seriously injured. Another big thing that I really desperately wanted to find closure with was the Good Samaritan who pulled me out of the vehicle. So my, best friend was called by a gentleman who came across the scene, I guess, seconds after it had happened, and dialed the last number. The last number happened to be my best friend, who then, my best friend then came to the scene. But that particular gentleman did not stay until the ambulances, etc., had arrived. He left. So I'd always wanted to know who that Good Samaritan was.
Wow. Tshepiso, maybe just on this last part that you have just said, it gives hope to know that in South Africa, and I believe there are many of such people who still have got the welfare of others at heart, and they are there to help. Because we know of instances where people come to accident scenes and they come with a view to benefit. We know of stories where people's rings are taken off their fingers, their belongings being taken, or people taking photos and videos instead of helping. So maybe let's hope that through this platform, the person will come through this recording and go through it. If you were to look at that person and say a few words to them, I believe in the universe. Whether you meet him or her, we don't know. You said it's a gentleman, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah. You meet him or not, I think if we put it out there in the universe, which I think you have, but if you were to take this moment and speak to that person, what would you say?
I would say, thank you. Thank you. You really were there when I needed you. I didn't know that I would need you, but you were there when you needed me. And moving forward from that moment, you've taught me, a valuable life lesson that, I also, move on in my life and be a good Samaritan to someone else, to other people. So that's one of the biggest things I take out of that Good Samaritan moment.
Okay. No, great. And let's hope that this message will get down. We thank that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me just go back to what you said about, and you used the word desperate in terms of wanting closure. Why was this thing of finding out what happened to your car important to you?
It was important because, in life, especially, earlier on in your life, things are in neat packages. There's a beginning, there's an end, you know how stories unfold. You've got a good handle on, on things in general, and that's how you, for most things, have succeeded, in your earlier life. And for most, things in my life, it was still important because, that not only was my mode of transport that I heavily relied on and trusted but I needed a sense of having control, of that situation, seeing whether the brakes had failed or not, or if there were things from the other vehicle that were in my car, but a sense of wanting to control things, was still quite an important, aspect.
Okay. Just for clarity, we're sitting here today, you still don't have a clue what happened to your car?
I still do not have a clue of what happened to my car. I don't have a clue of what happened to the, to the case, to the traffic cops that were there, the police officers that were there, the tow truck that was there, nothing.
Okay,
Nothing.
okay. And you have made peace with that?
I have made peace with that, and I've also made peace with the fact that I don't have memory of that fateful night. I have made absolute peace with it.
Okay. So as we going closer to wrapping the conversation, I would like to involve other people in this conversation that you don't know, that I don't know, that don't know us as well. There is someone sitting at home and they are going through challenges. They might not have gone through the accident, or they might have gone through the accident like you. Others might have burned in a fire, and they struggle with accepting themselves, how they look. What would you, if you have an opportunity to sit down with such a person and you say, this is a 5-step process to go through trauma. And I'm just saying 5-step. I'm not necessarily saying that it should go that way, but this is the way to go through trauma, because I want to believe that was a traumatic experience. What would you say to such a person?
I would say to the person, and the one thing that I didn't do, but years later, I realized that it's probably something that I should have maybe had in my armor of healing at the time. Grab the opportunity to surround yourself with help. Sometimes you don't even realize that you need help. Like I said earlier, I didn't, undergo counseling or, that kind of process. But years later, I believe that had I used that opportunity, I probably would have let go of some of the hindrances, some of the things that, were not going to be resolved a whole lot earlier. Secondly, I would have received, the tools to, assist me, not just with the specific thing that I'm dealing with, but with the ability to see beyond the issue that you're dealing with. Because life is not about one challenge that you're facing. Life is a mirror of a whole lot of things that you are a participant in. So those two things I would definitely say to the to the individual. I think the third thing I would say to the to the individual is it's okay when you don't have the answers. It's okay when the doctors don't tell you that you're going to go back to where you were, or it's going to even be better than it was previously. What is important is that you are able to every day try, every day take a step further forward to improve yourself. The sum of every day, of many everydays, is equal to months, years, of realizing that what, I'm here, I'm alive. Yes. I've got a community of people that care about me, and I still have a contribution to make to the society.
Wow. No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Let me just ask another question that relates to the experience, just for clarity. I know you drove yourself to come here, but in most cases when people get out of accidents, or at least those that I know, a few of those cases that I know, to be exact, I know only 2 people who after the accident, they said, I won't drive again. Did you go through that or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. And the silver lining in not knowing what happened. For years, I spent time wanting to find out exactly the details of what happened. And actually, the magic in not knowing, has enabled me to move forward, has enabled me to get into a vehicle and, and drive, and not have these, things in your mind that, are fears, they disable you, So no, I've never really had, difficulties in getting behind the wheel after the accident.
No, that's great. And Tshepiso, as I said at the beginning, we're grateful that even after that night, spending almost a month in the hospital, that you are alive, taking 3 months of healing, and not only physical healing, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual healing for you to be here. And I know I asked you that what would be those 5 things you advise somebody to go through when they go through trauma. But we always end the show by saying, looking at your life in general, whether it's this experience, whether it's other experiences you have gone through in your life, what would be that life 101 lesson that you would leave with somebody so that they can change their lives to the better?
Sure. I would say you've got to back yourself. You've got to be your number one supporter. The other people, in life are there to support what hopefully is already there. I think it's a huge life lesson, to believe in yourself before the next person does.
Yeah. Thank you, Tshepiso, for being with us. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And as somebody at home, for me, this is a story of courage. This is a story of self-acceptance. This is a story of letting go. This is a story of forgiveness. And because when we stay in those spaces that deprives us of the energy we need to move on, we will never heal. And I'm not by any stretch of imagination suggesting that it is going to be easy. It was never meant to be easy. Hence, I say it's a story of courage. And we believe that this story will change someone's life to the better. Thank you. Until the next episode.